The journey of building your own sanctuary is, above all, a test of patience and endurance. It's not just about erecting walls and a roof. It's about transforming raw materials into a home capable of withstanding time and the elements.
What we are about to follow is the meticulous process of breathing life into a cabin, where solitary effort shapes the landscape and carves out a space of comfort in the middle of the wilderness. But to reach the final result we envision, we must start from zero, where everything finds its footing, the earth.
The longevity of any structure is defined long before the first wall is raised. It is determined the moment we decide how that structure will touch the ground. Preparing the base, or foundation, is the most critical stage of the entire project. On sandy or unstable soil, the challenge is to transfer the colossal weight of the cabin to the ground evenly, preventing the house from sinking or cracking over time. The process begins with excavation and preparing the footings. It's not just digging a hole, it's finding the correct depth, often seeking the frost line or compacted soil. Using form tubes allows for the creation of clean, precise concrete pillars, but the secret to strength lies inside. Concrete by itself is incredibly resistant to compression. It can withstand tons of weight pressing down on it. However, it is fragile when it comes to tension and torsion. With the base consolidated, construction enters the framing phase. Here, the main concept is leveling and squaring. A house that is out of square at the base will result in a roof that doesn't fit at the top. The deck framing and the raising of the walls create the skeleton of the cabin. Treated lumber is used in areas near the ground to prevent rot, while the upper structure focuses on rigidity. Once the skeleton is standing, the absolute priority becomes sheathing. Using OSB, or oriented strand board sheets, serves not only to close the walls, but to brace the structure, preventing it from racking in the wind. However, wood and water are mortal enemies. Before any aesthetic finish, the house needs to be transformed into an impermeable fortress. Applying synthetic membranes, or house wrap, on the walls and roofing felt on top creates the first line of defense. The goal is to create a continuous envelope. Rainwater and melting snow must run off the exterior without ever touching the wooden structure. On the roof, the choice of corrugated metal panels is strategic. Beyond a durability exceeding 50 years, metal offers a smooth, cold surface.
In regions with heavy snowfall, metal roofs are preferred not just for durability, but for the physics of shedding. Accumulated snow can weigh tons, threatening to collapse the structure. Metal facilitates the sliding of this load, clearing the roof naturally. As for the walls, modern membranes function like a one-way skin. They are microscopically designed to stop rainwater droplets from entering, but allow water vapor molecules, generated by showers and breathing inside the house, to escape. If the house were completely plastic wrapped, internal moisture would be trapped, rotting the wood from the inside out. With the shell protected, the work turns inward, where engineering meets design. In custom cabins, we often see a hybrid approach to construction. while the exterior walls use modern stick framing techniques, thin, light studs. The central support often revives the tradition of timber framing, massive logs. Installing a central post made from a whole tree trunk is not just aesthetic. It supports the load of the roof ridge, distributing the weight organically.
Watching the assembly, we witness the structure gaining its true form. High on the rafters, the installation of the roof sheathing is physically demanding, yet it is what locks the geometry in place. As the builder moves to the walls, cutting out window openings with a saw reveals the cabin's views for the first time. But raw OSB is vulnerable. This is why the installation of the house wrap, followed by the meticulous placement of the corrugated metal roofing, is a race against the weather. Finally, setting the windows and applying the exterior trim involves a rigorous protocol. Every bead of sealant, every strip of flashing tape around those flanges, and the precise cutting of the cedar trim, these are the practical steps that seal the envelope. A window installed without this attention to detail is essentially a funnel for water.
Building a home from scratch is an exhaustive endeavor. It is a lonely path where every detail rests entirely on the builder's shoulders. He dedicates himself to the integrity of the structure because he understands that these core components dictate the final reality. There is no room for error here. This meticulous approach is the only insurance against the ravagers of time, ensuring that the work done today stands firm for generations.
Parallel to the heavy structure, the nervous system of the house is installed. The electrical wiring must be meticulously planned before the walls are closed. Boxes, conduits, and cables are run through holes in the studs. This is the moment to predict the future. Where will we need light? Where will we charge equipment? Electrical installation in a remote, off-grid cabin requires even more attention to efficiency, as every watt consumed will come from a limited battery bank. Still in this rough phase, vertical circulation is solved. Stairs in small spaces defy geometry. Building a ship's ladder, steep but with wide treads, is an ingenious solution to access lofts without losing usable floor space on the ground level. When working with solid logs or heavy beams, excessive use of metal screws can be counterproductive. Solid wood expands and contracts significantly with the seasons. Rigid metal connections can shear off or crack the wood. Therefore, joinery techniques are used, such as the mortise and tenon joint. This type of connection, often locked by wooden pegs, allows the structure to breathe and settle over centuries without losing structural integrity. A visually impressive cabin that cannot retain heat is uninhabitable. Thermal insulation is what transforms a shed into a home. The principle here is to create a barrier of still air. Fiberglass, commonly used, works by trapping air between its fine fibers, making it difficult for temperature to transfer from the outside to the inside. Every gap, every irregular corner around windows and studs must be filled. Poorly done insulation creates thermal bridges, cold spots that generate condensation and mold. After guaranteeing efficiency, the finishing comes in. The ceiling, being the largest visible surface in an A-frame or pitched roof cabin, sets the tone of the environment. Using tongue-and-groove paneling creates a clean, linear look. In special projects, the choice of wood tells a story. The use of blue pine is an example of transforming a natural imperfection into a visual highlight. The gray and blue stains in the wood break the monotony of common yellow pine, creating an artificial sky of textures indoors. The distinct coloration of blue pine is not a tree species, but the result of an ecological interaction. It is caused by a fungus introduced by the mountain pine beetle. The fungus stains the sapwood of the tree, but does not affect its structural integrity if the wood is harvested and dried in time. Once considered defective wood and discarded by the timber industry, today, it is highly valued in rustic construction for its unique aesthetic and the aspect of sustainability, utilizing trees that died naturally in the forest.
True sophistication in a dark or rustic cabin lies in its integration with nature. Biophilic design seeks to connect the occupant to the natural environment through the use of organic shapes. Instead of buying industrial handrails or perfectly straight lumber, collecting curved branches and trunks from the forest surrounding the build brings the site's identity inside the house. The process of manually peeling these branches reveals the hidden beauty beneath the rough bark, maintaining the shape the tree took decades to sculpt. By using these elements as railings or columns, the rigidity of modern construction's straight lines is broken. It is a constant reminder that the cabin is a permitted intruder in the forest, and not the other way around. This concept extends to the window finishes and sills. The use of live-edge slabs, where the natural curvature of the tree's side is preserved, adds texture and touch. Each piece is exclusive, impossible to replicate by machine. Working with raw wood collected from the forest requires specific care against pests. Before being permanently installed indoors, this wood generally needs to be peeled to remove insects living in the cambium, the layer between the bark and the wood, and must dry adequately. If installed too green or wet, it will shrink drastically, loosening joints and connections that seemed tight at the moment of installation. This patience with the material is the price of quality. Rushing this stage is a guarantee of failure. But once the wood is stable and cured, the builder is no longer limited to what is available at the hardware store. He crosses a threshold, gaining total control over his supply chain. The pinnacle of autonomous construction is the ability to produce your own finishing materials. The floor of a house is the most used and worn surface.
Instead of resorting to plastic laminates, using a portable sawmill allows one to transform fallen logs into solid floorboards. This process connects the builder to the raw material in an intimate way. They decide the thickness, the width, and maximize the yield of each log. Installing this floor requires technique, using wedges and clamps to force the boards together, strategic screwing, and finally sanding. Sanding serves not only to make the floor smooth to the touch, but to level the small height differences between the artisan sawn boards, creating a monolithic surface. One of the biggest challenges in making your own flooring is moisture content. Wood is a hygroscopic material, meaning it absorbs and releases moisture from the air, expanding and contracting. Before final installation and finishing, it is crucial that the boards undergo a period of acclimatization inside the environment where they will stay. This prevents large gaps from appearing between boards months later if the wood shrinks, or the floor buckling and lifting if the wood expands. In the final stretch, construction ceases to be about structure and becomes about protection and functionality. Bare wood is porous and susceptible to staining and wear. Applying finishes, whether penetrating oils or film-forming varnishes, serves the dual purpose of aesthetics and preservation. Varnish creates a sacrificial layer that takes the abrasion of footsteps, protecting the wood fiber. Furthermore, the wetting effect of the varnish alters the index of light refraction on the surface, causing the grain and colors of the wood to jump out, creating visual depth.
Finally, the cabin needs to come alive. In remote locations, connection to the electrical grid is unfeasible. Installing modern solar systems allows autonomy without sacrificing comfort. Electricity powers not just the light, but the possibility of prolonged stays. The final touch on the facade, painting the frames and doors in dark tones, serves to frame the view and contrast with the natural wood, visually anchoring the cabin in the landscape. There is an important distinction between finishes. Varnishes, like polyurethane, create a hard plastic film over the wood. They're great for protection against physical scratches, but if the layer is breached, water can enter and stain the wood underneath, requiring total sanding to repair. Traditional oils, like tung or linseed, penetrate the fibers and harden within them. They offer less protection against physical scratches, but are much easier to repair and maintain the natural texture of the wood to the touch, allowing spot maintenance without sanding the entire floor. At the end of the process, what we have is not just a shelter, but a complex system of choices, chemistry, and physics working in harmony to sustain human life in a hostile environment. Every nail, every saw cut, and every layer of varnish carries the intention of permanence. Building your own cabin is understanding that comfort is not something bought off the shelf, but something earned, layer by layer, from the raw foundation to the last detail of the finish. If this immersion into construction processes changed how you view a simple wooden house, consider subscribing to the channel. The journey of building is long, and there is much more to learn about the art of living with autonomy. Leave a like and comment. Which of these stages did you find the most challenging? See you in the next project.